So I just want to welcome my guests today. Two of them I have seen perform, Heather Oakley and Ken Cope. I've seen both of them perform two shows each. The new person in our little group here is Carin Estey, and she's here for a very interesting discussion, something all the years I've been in theater, I'm very familiar, certainly with movies, of something called an intimacy coordinator, decency. They have many different names for them, of course, and they help actors deal with very intimate situations. In a movie, it could be a nude scene. Obviously, we're doing non-professional, and when I say that, it's not a put down, but it's something people do is their second job, if you will. So that I have never seen a local theater show done nudity, but I'm assuming they do. The closest coming, we'll talk about it because I didn't get to see Full Monty, but I'm guessing both of you actors saw that, correct?
I saw that, yes.
Yeah. Ken saw it, so at least we can have, and Carin was intimacy for that as well, a whole different concept. So again, the show we're talking about that does involve all three of you is called The Allergist's Wife. It's not easy to say.
Tale of the Allergist's Wife, yes.
And in that, there is interaction between a husband and wife. There's intimacy, meaning kissing and grabbing and all that stuff, between a husband and a guest of the wife. And there is some intimacy between the wife and her guest, who is female. You're the guest, Heather. Mm-hmm. And you're the husband. So we're going to talk about how you prepared for it, how comfortable, uncomfortable that might have been. But we're going to start with Carin because I don't know anything about training. I don't know if there is certification in that stuff. So we're going to let her give us a little primer, and then we'll launch into how it worked with the show at the Granite Theatre, by the way.
Great. I could talk for hours about intimacy.
I'm sure. Go ahead.
I'll try to keep it short, though. So first of all, in intimacy work, there's actually two different types of roles. You can be an intimacy director and an intimacy coordinator. I get this all the time. I'm not an intimacy coordinator. I'm actually an intimacy director. Intimacy coordinator is for television and film. That's probably why you hear it more. The folks from HBO, those folks, they're all intimacy coordinators. Intimacy directors specialize in stage and live performance, so dance, theater, experimental live works, things like that. You start off the same with the training, and then depending on who you train with, it kind of splits because, as you can imagine, intimacy work is very different for film and TV than it is with theater. You have sightlines that are different. The whole question of what do you do with a live audience and their relationship with consent is totally different. You're able to mask a lot easier in TV and film, whereas theater, it's much harder to mask. So they're just slightly different skill sets. And, just the way that both operate in terms of a day-to-day workspace are slightly different. So I'm personally an intimacy director. I have done some consulting on film, but my training is specifically more for intimacy direction. I have trained with two different organizations, Theatrical Intimacy Education, or TIE, and intimacy directors and coordinators. I am a certified consent-forward artist through Intimacy Directors and Coordinators, and I'm in the process of getting my certification. It takes a lot of training, lots and lots of classes. There's several parts to your training. The first, with IDC, like I said, the first two rounds, level 1 and level 2, are the same, and then that's when you split off. And then you kind of specialize from there in theater or film. And in between that, you do a ton of self-study. So you're getting trained in anti-racism practices, in conflict resolution, mental health first aid, all sorts of intersectional identities and how to deal with different issues of that. So you're learning all those kind of different things, so you know how to navigate a space and know how to hold your space no matter who you're working with the best of your ability. So it's a lot of training, a lot of work, but it's definitely some of the best training that I have gotten in my entire life. And then I always like to throw in there, I also got to train, I was certified in fight choreography, choreography. My certification has since lapsed, unfortunately, but that's because I was certified in London and I haven't been able to get back over there. But the London Academy of Stage and Screen Fighting, I studied and was certified with them as well. So those kind of three groups are where I pull my different training from, as well as my undergrad at Ithaca College.
So it sounds like it again. We don't have to pick it apart, but it sounds very psychological, and not so much what something looks like. That's what a choreographer does. This person looks good doing that. Those hand movements, whatever, look good. Even blocking, this is better if you're over. But this, you're really dealing sort of with psyches and breaking down barriers to people being, if they, as well as they can be, natural on stage, doing things that are not natural to them with people who they barely know. Is that sort of like make some sense?
Yeah, it's kind of a two-part thing. It is the choreography, and then it is setting those boundaries and kind of creating a space that can hold everyone in it. The really short version of my job is to carry out the vision of the director as closely as possible while maintaining and respecting the boundaries that the actors give me. So that does include choreography, but it includes all that other stuff too. And it takes a lot of learning all that kind of psyche stuff, as you mentioned, and all that kind of interpersonal communication. It takes a lot of learning that before you're able to even touch the choreography. But the choreography is a huge part as well. But you can't effectively do that choreography without building all that scaffolding. And a lot of the community theaters that I've worked with, a lot of the times, because I do work in this professionally, I have a discounted rate for community theaters, but tight budgets, tight timeline. So a lot of the times with community theaters, and Heather and Ken can speak to this a little more, a lot of times I'll come in and I'll mostly just do that boundary setting and kind of do a crash course in like how to hold the space. And then that's the most time that they'll usually have for me in a process. I hope that that can expand more in the future. But one of the things about intimacy direction is that it takes a long time and it's supposed to be slow. Intimacy direction goes against everything everyone learned in theater school. And that's on purpose. So it's slowing down that urgency. It's taking time and taking space that traditionally you don't see in a lot of theater spaces. So it's really reworking from the ground up what your experience is in a theater space and trying to navigate the power dynamics that have existed for so many years, and trying to break some of those things down. But a lot of what I end up doing in community theater, since I can only come in for a little bit of time with schedulings and things like that, is kind of like step in, give them the tools, and then hopefully they can fly without me. I love doing the choreography part as well, but just with the nature of timing, that often is my relationship with community theater specifically.
Now to the actors. When you guys, I've never seen a script, is the intimacy, obviously it's in there, don't remember your characters' names, but so-and-so kisses so-and-so. So when you read the script before you even auditioned, I'm assuming you realized that there was, realistic, not comedy slapstick stuff is fine, but this was, more real in the context of a comedy. So it was real. So either one of you can jump in. You obviously knew that this was going to happen, correct?
Well, I guess I had read the full script before we went into auditions. So I know. I think you hadn't, Heather. But
well, it's funny. I had a copy of the script where it just wasn't complete. So mm-hmm. I had the main idea, but that particular scene that we're talking about, I didn't know that was in the script. I knew that there was, I think there was some kind of intimation that something had happened. So it was very clear to me that something had occurred, but I hadn't read the exact description of that scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, go ahead, Tad. Jump in.
No, I guess it's interesting. It's interesting hearing Carin talk about just some of the limitations that you have in terms of time. Both in terms of the rehearsal schedule that a community theater might have and the amount of time that you can allocate to working with them. But what you were saying really resonated with me. You came in, you gave us the tools that we needed to pull everything together. And it may not be as much as you can provide in a professional situation. But it was so much more than I've ever had before in doing that sort of thing. And it was really nice. I mean, I especially loved the exercise that you put us through. I mean, this was after kind of the introductory material that you did, the exercise that you put us through where we all identified our physical boundaries for each other, where we were comfortable, being touched by each other, and where we were not comfortable, and that was so great because it removed any questions. I knew, exactly after that, I had communicated to Heather and Sandy, and each of you had communicated to me, just where the boundaries were physically, and that it honestly was such a relief, that was out of the way to be able to go forward from that point. And be able to do the work respecting those boundaries.
Did either one of you actors have any experience doing so? I don't mean just a peck on the cheek or a peck even on the lips. Did you have any experience in theater in any situation where it says, and again, and people didn't see the play, it's not, rolling around and certainly not declothing and all that. But there were more than one scene where your bodies were in contact, not just kissing. But either one of you ever, was this like, well, I've done this before, but it was great to have a coach. I was always uncomfortable that other time. But either one of you ever did this before?
I've definitely had scenes that are intimate in nature. Everything is different. I mean, that's the thing. It's like you can be very, every situation, every play, every combination of people makes it different. I mean, it's always vulnerable. The vulnerability never goes away. And if the vulnerability goes away, you're not really doing your work. So it's not really a matter of, inuring yourself to vulnerability or not feeling vulnerable anymore, because that's really not the goal. It's not to numb yourself. It's not to be like, I got to get through this. It's really more of what Carin and Ken are alluding to, which is that you're trying to provide a clear and safe container for the actors to work in. And Carin, she's so expert at this work, and she just sort of described myriad skills that she has. And this work intersects in so many different ways. It's not just like, okay, you're just going to do this thing and then everybody's going to be fine. It's like, it's an evolving thing. And Ken and Sandy and I checked in at the beginning of every single rehearsal and performance, to just sort of say, this is where we are today. This is how our body is feeling today. Ken was recovering from what you had some tendon pain or something, right? What was your wrist?
Yeah, I was dealing with some tendonitis.
Yeah. So some tendonitis, or someone would say, "Oh, my back is kind of hurting today," or it was like it was sort of and that's part of that relationship that we're creating, where there's an intimacy, and even just talking about our bodies just as they exist, as Heather and as Ken and as Sandy. And so, I would say that, not only have I done scenes like that as an actor in many different contexts, but I've also been a teacher of acting. I taught acting for over 20 years in New York, and I had to work on scenes with young students or, college age students, and we didn't have those, we certainly could talk about it in terms of, you're going to break it down and nothing is going to be a surprise to you and all this kind of stuff. But this work that Carin does is much deeper than that.
Did you lose yourselves such into the character that by performance you weren't thinking about Ken's shoulder or this or that? Or was that always part of what you were doing, that you couldn't not forget those things that aren't natural to us? The training from Carin was probably not something you did before. So those are new to you. You may have been acting, how to learn lines, how to do blocking, but how did it affect you portraying the characters? Ken, why don't you start this thing?
I think that has to be answered in the context of the actual scene, because it was a very technical scene when it comes right down to it. And I've got to lay it out a little bit. There were two very different things happening in the scene, and the comedy came from the interaction in those scenes. My wife, Marjorie, played by Sandy, she was over on the other side of the stage. She was mixing herself a cocktail, and she was talking. She tends to go deep into the theoretical, philosophical side of things. And she was talking about, how she can understand, lesbianism on a theoretical basis, but, not without getting into the nitty gritty of the actual experience, that kind of thing. And she's pontificating on this, oblivious to the fact that Lee, Heather's character, is out and out seducing me, and being extremely physical about it. And the thing is, it was a very technical scene in that we had a lot of choreography that we had to time to Marjorie's speech, so that we were at the right places and the right points in that speech, so that when she turned around and saw us, we were at the right place. And so a lot of it was, listening to what Marjorie is saying while we're doing the things that we're doing. And there are all of the usual choreography elements that we are concerned with. I mean, how are we positioning our bodies at a given point of time? What are we doing with our hands? When are we kissing each other? When are we breaking the kiss? How are they, those kinds of things.
On the couch.
Yeah.
I mean, the couch was a character. The couch was definitely a character in the play.
But it was the technical elements, for me anyway. It's funny because the humor came from the contrast between these two things that were going on. Over on our side of the stage, and this was something we worked through with Nicole DeBate, the director. One of the first things I asked her when we started to do the choreography is, okay, are we going for any humor on our side of the stage, or are we just trying to make it hot? She says, no, I want it to be hot. And, that's, and the last, I mean, Heather, you've been a professional actor, for a long time. You've taught acting for a long time. I had much less experience. I had several years in my 20s when I was acting. A number of intimate scenes during that time, but there was no such thing as an intimacy director then. But I guess what it comes, this experience, I think, came across to the audience. My hope was that it came across to the audience as hotter than anything I've ever done on stage before. But it was so technical, in particular, that it was a profoundly unsexy thing to be a part of in the moment. We were so worried, we were focusing on so many things very technically. I hate to blow the secret here, folks, but
now I'll answer your question in a moment, but I want to, what an audience member brought from it. But so Heather, it's similar that your mind is both with the character and timing of lines in other parts of the play, and then all of a sudden now I'm coming to this place where I'm dancing. Okay, so that's got to take a lot of presence in what's going on if it's going to be pulled off.
Yeah, I mean, it is, as Ken said, and, Carin will concur, and Nicole and Roger Pavey, who was our assistant director, it was a lot of choreography. And it was literally down to, like, your hand looks better here. This is a better spot. Try this. The elements of slow versus fast versus wet, it was extremely complicated. And again, it was done in a very short period of time. It was kind of like, we got to get this going and we need to get it done, because in reality, the only thing the only way through it really to make it look natural and make it, and so that the audience can have the experience that that Nicole was hoping for, is by repetition. We had to repeat it and do it again and do it again and do it again and do it again. And what I will say is, as the time went on, it was more habitual in our bodies, so that we weren't like, now what? Yeah. But I still had to listen. There were cues that I had to hit. And if I didn't hit them at the right time, it was off. So there is that kind of pressure where you're sort of thinking, okay, I need to hit my marks, and I need to make sure that this, that we're telling the right story. So yeah, it became easier for us to do it. But it was never a moment of we're sort of feeling like, we were always aware of what we were doing, is what I would say.
So Mr. Audience Member, which was me, my wife, who is not a theater person, I think we both had the same opinion of the scenes. They were hot. I did not think of them as, I saw what was happening, right? I've never seen the play. I've never seen the movie I didn't even go, a lot of times I go on YouTube and see the high school stuff if they're doing, or semi-pros. This particular one, I just came to see the show because Ken was in it, and I like Ken. So I came to see the show. And so I didn't know what to expect. A couple first scenes, her on the couch and the headache and all that. I'm going, what's going on? Okay, I know it's Bush. Charles Bush is weird. So I'm ready for some weirdness. But then it got, it's not Death of a Salesman. It's its own thing. And so, like you said, the humor came from the realness. The humor came from the hotness. You could either be, and I will ask you briefly in a minute or two, what did your family members? I know, Ken, you're married. I don't know, Heather, are you married or have a significant other?
Yes. Yep. Not only am I married, my father saw it, my mother saw it, and my 17-year-old daughter saw it. So yeah, my 13-year-old son was allowed to stay home. He did not have to come see his mother, but everybody else did. Yep.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. That's pride. What you're doing. So we're going to come back to this, but I want to make sure we touch a little bit on, and Ken, you can add a little to it because you saw the show. The other show that you worked on, Corinne, was The Full Monty. Now, I didn't see it, but most people know briefly, the story is a bunch of steel workers, I guess, in Britain, and they are losing job, whatever. So they decide to form a male strip routine or strip group, and to get paid and go out, and they do. And again, I saw a little bit of the movie online, I guess, but I saw the Facebook pictures of these guys. They were, I guess, are supposed to be like that. They're like older guys, not Chippendales. They were not Chippendales. At least the actors who were cast were not. Now, maybe the script calls it, but they weren't. And so I saw some pub shots of it now. And I talked to Nicole about this, who directed that too, I believe. And she had this final scene where they're supposed to either drop a towel or whatever they drop, and they're supposed to be totally naked, full Monty from the front. And the way she covered it, she told me, I did not see it, was this flash of light that blinded the audience. And if that cue had to come on time, now they weren't fully naked. They had flesh-colored briefs on, but it still was. So when you were working with them, they didn't have intimacy with each other, but they had to sort of be as free as their characters were supposed to be with their bodies. So how did that differ from this kind of intimacy that you did in The Tale of the Allergist's Wife?
Yeah. Full Monty, this was my first interaction with the show. I knew of it just because I feel like it's one of those things that people know. It's the show that everyone,
thing. That
Full Monty is Full Monty, and that's all I knew. And so I watched the movie, and the play is pretty similar, other than the musical is set in the U.S. But they're pretty close beyond that. It's a great. It's like you said. It's supposed to be normal guys, everyday Joes. Many of them are fathers, husbands, and it actually is this great story about body positivity in a lot of ways, which I wasn't expecting. So that was really kind of delightful. But with a big group like that, at the end, not only is the striptease act going on stage, you have people in the audience too who are playing audience members, like their wives, their girlfriends, women from this small town that they work in.
Okay.
So I met with the entire cast. And I didn't do a single bit of choreography. In part, Nicole was the choreographer, Marla Ladd was the director. And so they had choreographed it, but they were getting ready to take the pants off. And so I just came in and I did some of those boundary setting. I think it was like I can't remember, but at least 30 people in that room. It was a big cast, and we all just sat down. And I've noticed a lot of the times with community theater group, it kind of starts the same. Like people are kind of joking for a few minutes, and then about 5-10 minutes in, they like kind of lock in, and they have this moment of like, oh, okay, we're gonna let our guard down. We're gonna talk about this, and we just chatted. We just chatted for, I think it was an hour straight. We set a couple of those boundaries. I didn't do the consent exercise that we talked about, but I taught it to the actor.
I don't want to interrupt, but you've said the phrase several times. So, I can understand boundaries between two people having an intimate scene. What are the boundaries? In other words, you don't go up and grab someone by whatever. What are the boundaries that you're setting for people who aren't interacting by, well, maybe they do. They don't touch, or do they, do they touch each other during the routines? Or
no, they don't.
Independently?
There is one couple. So for that couple, the physical boundaries in terms of what Ken and Heather were talking about where they're comfortable interacting and touching each other, right. I instructed them to do that on the side,
sure.
Just because of the amount of time that we had. For the rest, it was more about kind of just creating the space, creating the room. There's certain rules in intimacy direction, like when you're rehearsing and choreographing, no one should be in the room other than who's really immediately needed to be there. There's no need to have the entire team
sure.
in the room, just for the matter of safety, comfortability. The more people you add, the less likely someone is to say, hey, I'm sorry, this isn't working for me. So kind of talking about those things, talking about when they move forward, who's going to be in the room, who's not going to be in the room. Talking as well, those other people in the room, even if they're not touching, consent still exists because, indecent exposure, things like that, you can cross someone's boundary without physically touching them in a way. So understanding,
sure.
Like Heather was talking about, the really specific choreography, that's in there to keep people safe in a lot of ways. It's there for, because it creates great and interesting theater, because detailed and specific choices always make for great theater. But it is also to make sure that no one can suddenly do something different one night. Or if they do, that the stage manager can look down and be like, that wasn't it. Maybe I'll give the intimacy director a call. We'll figure out what's going on. Was it a mistake? Did someone forget? Or is something happening? Sure. And that's a great way to make sure everyone's good. So talking about things like that, because a lot of times, those people who are on stage for those scenes, they don't even think of themselves as having, a say in what's happening, but they do. Everyone does. Consent extends to your costume designers, to your ensemble, to your audience even. And that's all taken into consideration with intimacy direction and should be.
So again, let's, as we sort of wrap up here, I do want to come back and find out what you guys are up to going forward. I did not, it's my fault. I don't know how complete, even either here or in the Laramie program, Heather, your background is. I didn't know that you were co-involved with you. That's wonderful. But are you also like in the Westerly, Connecticut? Are you out there, or
I currently live in Norwich, where I grew up. And I came back in December of 2020. So, or 20, or who knows? My goodness. I guess, so I have been around, and I've been involved in local community theater, which is wonderful. And I think it's incredibly special, and I feel very lucky. I've loved doing my work at the Chestnut Street Playhouse in Norwich, but Westerly is an absolute dream.
So what are you guys doing now?
Go ahead.
Well, Corinne, I don't know if you know this, but you and I are going to be working together again very soon.
I saw that. I'm super
Yeah,
excited.
yeah.
Now, what's the show?
It's a show up at Chestnut Street Playhouse up in Norwich. Uh, it's called The Lady Killing of Chattanooga. It is the very first production of a new play. Very excited about that. Great script, written by a Connecticut playwright, Scott Kegler. Um, and it is about a historical event in which there was a traveling troupe of players, a professional traveling troupe doing a comedy. They were in Chattanooga. The curtain was within minutes of opening, and to a packed house of people. And shortly before the curtain opened, the leading lady came on stage, pulled a gun, and pumped 3 bullets into the leading man. And the play's about the circumstances before and after that, and everything that happens, told from the actress's point of view. And I play the leading man in that one. Tara Golson, who played Mrs. Webb, who she and I played husband and wife in our town, is playing the leading lady in this one. And I'm grateful to be working with someone that I've worked with before that I know a little bit, because this play actually touches on a completely different aspect of intimacy, which is in some ways harder to deal with, in many ways harder to deal with. The My character, to put it very simply, is pretty much a sexual predator, and there is a sexual assault that occurs on stage, and as you can imagine, there are a lot of aspects to that have to be handled carefully in terms of the actor's boundaries, in terms of Tara's boundaries, and also mine, in terms of the audience and what you're willing to put them through, and and serving the needs of the scene and advancing the story. It's going to be some very interesting work to do, and it's as intimacy work goes. I think, Corinne, I appreciated working with you in Allergist Wife. I don't know how we would do it without you in this one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is definitely
Yeah.
a piece that requires it, to be sure.
Yeah.
Now, Corinne, I think I noticed in one of your posts or something, you said you were stage managing somewhere. Is this the same production, or you're stage managing and doing intimacy?
Elsewhere.
Two different places.
I work pretty equally as both a stage manager and an intimacy director, but I'm stage managing a new play by Laura Tama for the Green Stage, Guilford Green Stage Theatre Festival. So I'm stage managing that, and it's a wonderful new piece about. I don't want to give too much away, but
it's just, I was confused. I was saying you could do both, of course, because you just set aside, a choreographer can stage manager, a choreographer can direct or whatever, or do sound. It's not like you're on stage or, that there's something you can't do both, which you could, but these are two different. All right, enough of you guys. All right, Heather, what have you got on the horizon?
Well, I've been working pretty steadily since I'm maybe October. So I'm taking the summer off so that I can spend time with my family. I'm also producing at Chestnut Street Playhouse with two colleagues, Derek Corriveau and Corey Mason. We do a local playwrights festival. And that's in September 5th through the 7th. Corinne had a play in it last year. Ken acted in it last year. It's a really great, it's our 5th annual festival, and it's growing and it's wonderful. It's all local playwrights from Rhode Island and Connecticut. And we have 6 new plays. And so that's, I'll be doing plenty of stuff.
there's an Atlantic article. Before you guys all came on, I told Carin about it. I want to read you the last paragraph. It's all about in the film. I thought of the observation that one of her colleagues had made in a workshop. I want to push against this idea that we're there to make people comfortable, he said. Performance is professional discomfort. We're here to help actors succumb to it. Intimacy coordinators have unsettled something in Hollywood and in us, and maybe that's their job. Chelsea Pace never asks her actors if they're comfortable, because they might not be. And a lot of actors aren't interested in being comfortable. They want to push themselves in their art. This is great, the last sentence. Also, she noted, you usually have something stuck in your pelvis area. That's not comfy.
Yeah, that sounds like Chelsea. I've studied with Chelsea. She is incredible. She literally wrote the book on staging sex. She wrote that book. But yeah, she's excellent. And she talks about, and Heather talked about this too, you have your comfort zone, your learning zone, and your panic zone. And we want everyone to always be in the learning or growth zone.
Right.
Yeah, so it's not about, and that's something that she teaches in her courses too. It's not about the comfort zone, but it's making sure that no one's ever in the panic zone, that wonderful sweet spot in the middle where you're not comfy, but you're pushing your boundaries, but you're still held and safe.
And as Ken said, obviously, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable both with Carin and just having done something as intense as The Tale of the Allergist's Wife as far as intimacy. So I'm going to come. I'm on your Facebook. Keep me informed of the shows going forward. And I do want to thank you for this. This has been an education for me and a lot of fun to meet people, talk about lives, and something that, like I said, in all the years I've done theater, this is brand new. And I'm happy. Just one quick thing for Carin. When did you decide you wanted to do this? I mean, where did it pop up? Where did you read about it on Google and go, I want to do that?
I'll try to keep this answer short. It's hard to, but I always knew I wanted to do theater. And then I did a production of the Laramie Project when I was 16 years old. And that made me realize I wanted to do theater for social change. And then I got into college and I started learning more about mental health through my own mental health journey. And I started to realize between both getting into professional theater and just discovering and exploring mental health that there's a lot of things that happen in theater. And even more so sometimes at a community or educational level that isn't entirely healthy, that isn't helpful. It's not sustainable is really the word I like to use. And that's why you see, sometimes folks will burn out early or, we have the stereotype of the tortured artist, and that's not how it needs to be. And so I decided in college, I majored in theater studies with focus in directing and playwriting. And I actually created my own second major at one point. And that was art and media for social change, which explored how art can help change the world on a macro level, but can also change on the individual. So think like therapeutic recreation, mental health, art therapy, things like that. And through a series of events, I go to London to study abroad. And while I'm in London, 2018, Harvey Weinstein, that whole case kind of came about. And I came back for my senior year at Ithaca College and everything had changed. And they brought in an intimacy director, and had an intimacy director meet with every single production, and it was just like, this is the thing I wanted to do, was to take care of the mental health of actors, and this is the best way that I can do this. And so it was kind of like something I was already trying to do, and then the industry kind of blew up as I was starting to do it, and so suddenly I had like a really concrete thing to hold on to, where I was kind of just in this nebulous, like, how do I help mental health of actors? Like, how do I do that and make this happen? And it was just kind of this wonderful synchronicity that that really, you know, the Me Too movement had this resurgence and all this stuff while I was in college. And I was so grateful that Ithaca really hopped on it and, took all that seriously and brought in intimacy directors. And, as soon as I learned about it and met an intimacy director for the first time, it just fell into place. And I was like, yes, this is what I'm supposed to do in theater. So, yeah.
So I want to thank my folks here today for a wonderful almost hour on an interesting subject, Ken Coe and Carin Estey and Heather Oakley. And I won't make a Annie Oakley joke at all. But I got a nice smile out of her. So everybody keep in touch. This has just been marvelous. And I'm looking forward to seeing all you guys and many more things.